there. Uh, and we'll have a number of our leadership in the Pacific and Asia there. But one of the points I'll make in my comments to our Asian partners and allies is that with this rebalance, which is the right thing to do for them too, by the way, not just for us, but for the rest of the world, that doesn't mean that we are abandoning our resources anywhere else or we're retreating from any other part of the world. We're not. Our interests are global, but as you rebalance the challenges and opportunities, and sometimes we forget there are opportunities, and I think the opportunities that abound today in the world probably centered as much in the Asia-Pacific as any one area, are as unique with as much potential as maybe ever in the history of man, and I really believe that. It's going to really depend on how wisely we govern, how wisely we respond to each other, how wisely we can form coalitions of common interests. We all have common interests. Our governments are different. Our histories are different. Our cultures are different. Some of us look different. Our languages are different. But still, the basic common interests of the human being don't change. And I've been all over the world like you have, been to a lot of countries in the world. I've never found a country yet, or a religion, or a culture, or a tribe that doesn't have the same feelings about their families. They love their families. You love your family. You start there. We all need the basics in life to survive. You start there. So if that is the given, and it is, then why can't we get along? Well, I know that's pretty simple. I get that. But I like to ask simple questions because we tend to kind of glide over simple things. And we tend to, more than occasionally, make things more complicated than they need to be. This is a defining time in the world. This is a defining time right now. This region of the world is going to have an awful lot to say about how this next world order is built out. And we've not seen a time like this in the world since really right after World War II, that 10-year period after World War II, when in fact the world was built out. The difference is the United States held most of the cards after World War II. We don't hold all the cards this time. And by the way, that's good. Allows other countries to share responsibilities. It allows other countries to prosper. And only then do we, and when we accept that premise, and we all accept that, will the world prosper. And I think we're right on the edge of that. So your role in this is pretty important. So with that, again, I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. That's the main message I wanted to give to you this morning. And I'd be very happy if the General lets me, if it's okay, I'll be glad to respond to a question, advice, suggestions, tell me to go home, whatever. I've got a reporter in the Washington bureau chief for the Omaha World Herald who's with me. That's my home state newspaper of Nebraska. And I just noticed he's in a big red N cap. You can't miss him. And so in particular, if you've got any advice for Joe Morton on Nebraska football this year, he will get it right to Coach Pelini and the people who are in charge, especially if you've got a trick play. Let him know. So anything you want to talk about, I'll take a couple minutes. Yes.
Good morning, sir. Petty Officer First Class Alvin Balthazar. I work for the Commander U.S. Pacific Fleet. In the military, we're dealing with a lot of financial cutbacks, and I was wondering if military retirement and other benefits are going to be affected as well, sir, in the near future?
Well, I think everyone heard that question. It's a very important question because, as I noted, we are going to be seeing budgets that are less and less, and we're living with that now. So we are reviewing every component of our budget, and we have to look at personnel costs because they represent the biggest part. Now that always has to be subject to this reality and to this priority. You take care of your people. It doesn't make any difference how sophisticated your equipment or anything else, if you don't have good people, and if you can't keep good people, and you can't continue to educate them and train them and develop them, it won't make any difference how good your planes are or anything else. So that's a high priority, as high as any priority. Obviously, that has to connect to national security. That's our job. That's my main job as the Secretary of Defense, the security of this country, like it's your jobs. But you do it with people. So everything that we're looking at, and we are looking at everything across the board, entitlement programs in every way. The Congress and the President are having to do the same thing with Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And so we are looking at it. To your more immediate question, is that going to affect your retirements and benefits? We suggested in our budget presentations to Congress this year that we asked the Congress to consider things like adjusting prescription copays to increase those copays. Not very much, by the way. Also, TRICARE fees. Not very much. TRICARE and all the benefits that come with the commitments we make to you are still the best benefits that I'm aware of anywhere in the world. And that's okay. That's as it should be, because you give up an awful lot for a career in the military. So that was the whole balance. But we've got to do things like that, or we won't be able to sustain the programs. And we can do it. We can do it smartly. We can do it wisely without hurting anybody. And that's the way we'll come at it, and that's the way we'll do it. Oh, thank you. Somebody else? Yes.
Morning, sir. I'm Petty Officer 3rd Class Michael Bird, and I'm from Commander Naval Region Hawaii out of Pearl Harbor. My question is, how does our government plan to increase cybersecurity in a world where the threat of global terrorism threats through cyber warfare is growing by the day, sir?
Well, you just defined the issue and the challenge. One of the very few items that the President proposed in his budget that I presented to the Congress this year to be increased was our cyber warfare capabilities. We are increasing that part of the budget significantly for the reasons you mentioned. We're doing more than just increase the budget. That means more people, more sophisticated approaches, and more interconnects within our intergovernment agencies. Obviously, the NSA, Cyber Command, Homeland Security, working with our law enforcement. And then another very important component to this is our allies and our partners. Because we live in a world, and you all know this, where one country's just not big enough, strong enough, good enough, wealthy enough to handle it all. You can't do it, especially cyber. And cyber is one of those quiet, deadly, insidious unknowns you can't see. It's in the ether. It's not one big navy sailing into a port, or one big army crossing a border, or squadrons of fighter planes crossing a border. This is a very difficult but real and dangerous threat. And there's no higher priority for our country than this issue. I had the privilege of co-chairing President Obama's Intelligence Advisory Board for 4 years before I was asked to do this job. And that issue took more of our time than any one issue. I served on the Senate Intelligence Committee for 8 years. And even 10 years ago on that committee, we were focusing on this. But to just give you one sense of the framing out on this and perspective, very few people 10 years ago, very few people 8 years ago, 6 years ago, would have rated cyber challenges, dangers, as maybe the biggest threat to all of us. I mean, it happens that fast, and you know all the reasons. You know, these attacks can paralyze an electric grid, a banking system, knock out computers on ships, our weapon systems, and you never fire a shot. And it's hard to detect exactly where it comes from. So you've got that added problem. you respond. If you respond, where do you respond? How do you respond? Are you sure you're responding to the right person, the right country, the right entity in that country? Tough issue, but no, we're working on it. We're working very hard on it. Are you in that business? Well, you're young, smart, good-looking, and you got a great future. But you're in Nebraska. No, it's a joke. I thought young, good-looking, smart. He had to be. Who else wants? Yes.
Morning, sir. I'm Corporal Herrick with Headquarters Battalion on Marine Corps Base Hawaii. I'm actually about to get out of the military in a couple of weeks here, and I've been noticing on the news a lot of stories about how backlogged